had here at Autosport Labs, and we're using this to showcase some new features for the RaceCapture system. I'm assuming you can hear the audio, and it looks like you can see the stream. So if somebody can't hear the audio, just let me know. I'll be looking over at the screen for any questions you might have. I'll turn my head to check for that. In the future, if this works well, we will improve the audio and the video quality and maybe invest in a little bit more gear. But yeah, thanks for hanging out. So we're going to go over a few new features. I have a list that you can't see off screen. There's a lot of this is are features that you have requested. So they're not really features. Some of them are fixes, but a lot of them are things that you have asked for quite a bit. So we're listening, and we are working to improve the system. And after this release, we'll have a lot more things to talk about, especially with the new Podium app and other improvements to the analysis and also video integration. So let's get started. So one of the first things that have been, oh great, audio is good, thank you. So one of the first things that we worked on for this release, and it's something that's been hilariously requested for a very long time, and there are some technical reasons why this took a while to do, but we now will have full ability to do imperial and metric switching in the app. And so we're looking at the GPS channels right now, and now you'll be able to switch between metric and imperial for individual channels. So we have speed, altitude. Not a lot of people care about that unless you're racing airplanes. And then on the race timing, you'll be able to specify distance for metric or imperial as well. So we'll go to the dashboard, and let's see. So here we have speed in miles, mile per hour in feet. And then show you, change it to metric, change it to metric in the other places. We didn't assume that we have a global switch for everything, because there are cases where somebody may want different units, so didn't want to assume. So here, now that I've updated the settings, you'll see that the speeds, distance, and altitude are in metric. Important to note, individual channels like your canvas mapping, your analog channels, and things like that, those have always been able to switch between metric or imperial or whatever other units that you want, because some people just might want their units in bar or PSI or Celsius or whatever, right? So this change specifically was around GPS speed and distance calculations. So sorry that took so long. There were reasons. I won't go into that, but now those will be available in the latest app and the firmware. All right. So another thing that has been asked for, and what we have right here, I don't know if you could see that. I guess we could put it in the round gauge for now. Let's see. There you go, session time. This is the amount of time that the current session has been running. So it's kind of like a stint timer. We'll just call it session time. And this gets reset whenever RaceCapture starts up, or when another feature, the reset session, is activated, and then your session time gets reset to 0, which we can demo right now. So it's a good segue. So on the now when you go into your dashboard settings, you see this big button here called Reset Session. If you press this, it basically starts a new lap timing session. And then as I exit that, you see your session time goes to 0. Your best time and your predictive timer are reset as well. It's like what you do is you press that, and it's like you have a new driver. So we have an on-screen button for this, and before you ask, there will be a Lewis script function as well, so you can wire up a GPIO on the dashboard. You could hit a button, and then if you write the appropriate script, which should be pretty simple, you'll be able to reset the session just with the switch on the dashboard. All right, another thing, and because we're in a metal box here at our lab, so it's really kind of hard to demo GPS. I guess we could run a super long cable to the outside for a GPS antenna, but we're lazy. So what you will also see is when you do get a GPS lock, your UTC time will be actually the time of day, and it should be to the locale of your device. So it should display the correct time. It's UTC but adjusted to your current time zone that you have configured on the tablet. So instead of having this really big integer number that's not very useful, now it'll show the actual time of day. So you can use that channel to see what the hell time is it right now, after I've been racing for, an hour and a half. So combined with the session time and the UTC time, those were a couple of important things that people have asked for quite a while. All right, going back into the dashboard settings. Thanks, Ross. I know you've been asking a lot about the time of day thing, so it's kind of funny. Some of these things just are pretty quick to implement. It's just getting over the stiction of doing it. So, all right. So here's another one. This is it's a feature, but also an important fix. So right now, let's say the way the system is designed is if you show up at a racetrack where there are multiple configurations, the app will ask and say, okay, which configuration are you racing at? And then you select it. The problem is there wasn't an ability to correct that if you selected the wrong configuration, or the wrong configuration somehow gets selected. So now when we go into app settings, you have another tab called detected tracks. And when you do have a GPS lock, you will have a region called nearby, and will show you the tracks that are actually nearby, the track configurations. So if it's saying the wrong thing, like Sonoma Raceway, this is, so this is kind of notorious to having Sonoma Raceway. Sometimes the system will go, oh, you must be at the karting track, right? So no, I'm not at the karting track. I'm actually at Sonoma. Let's see. Sonoma. Come on. There we are. Okay, so we have two tracks here. Sonoma karting track, and then the actual Sonoma Raceway, where most of you race when you are at Sonoma. So you'll be able to select, and then that will override and fix the setting for Sonoma Raceway, so you can go in and correct that. So you can get lap times like you would expect. Okay, so that is, I would probably put that in the category of a very important fix. Kind of also a feature, but definitely a fix. All right, what else? Okay, so far so good, no crashes. Let's see. The next thing we have on the list is, where are we? Accelerometer and gyro. Now we have the ability to update the smoothing on our accelerometer and gyro channels. So I'll do a little demo of what this looks like. So you'll be able to add smoothing to the accelerometer channels. This has always been in the background in the firmware. It's just been fixed to what we considered a reasonable amount of smoothing. But now you'll be able to, you know, set it to whatever you want. You can completely mess it up or have zero smoothing. So that this knob in the system is now available. So let's go ahead and select something like, what would be a good one? Yeah, the Z channel will be good because we can flip the RaceCapture upside down. Okay, so going back to the dashboard. So right now we're showing 1G, flip it upside down, you could see that. You could see that change. You can kind of see, it's a bit noisy, right? All right, get out of the way, Shift X3. We'll talk to you later. Okay, so upside down, right side up. Go back into setup. Let's crank the smoothing up to 50%. Write the settings back. Now you can see the smoothing is quite a bit more. So this is probably maybe a little more smoothing than you want. I think you'll want to experiment with this, you know, at your next event. But if we crank it up to something ridiculous, you'll see even more smoothing. And this is probably a setting you won't want, but it's available. So we'll set the smoothing back to what I think was the original value. So yeah, there you go. Okay, so now you'll have smoothing on your accelerometer and gyro channels. It's the smoothest, indeed. Okay, so another channel that we now have available is, it's basically a built-in math channel for the IMU, and that is called, wait for it, come on, GSUM. And most of you know what the GSUM channel is. It's basically a blending of the Excel X and Excel Y, or what other people might call the latitude and longitudinal acceleration. So the GSUM channel is a critical channel for seeing if you're using all of your grip, and whether you're braking or cornering. And while we were developing some of the new visualizations for Podium, we implemented a scatter plot, which you'll see in the future. But and in discussions with Scott Barton and a few other people, the scatter plot that shows a traction circle will look different based on the skill of the driver. So if the scatter plot looks kind of like a T, and we'll demo this in a in a different video. But if it looks like a T, that means you're braking and you're accelerating, and then you are turning left and right. But if it looks more like a D, or kind of like an oblique round shape, that means you're braking and also using your maximum amount of traction while doing threshold braking, cornering, and also accelerating, so that the corners of that T and the scatter plot are filled in. And this GSUM can help visualize that. So right now GSUM is 0 because accelerometer X and Y are 0. So if we put the RaceCapture on end, you'll see the Excel Y goes to about 1. What you'll notice is that the GSUM is always positive if there's any amount of G-force present. So positive or negative Y, positive or negative X. Oh, the cables. So, and then at an angle, you can see that I have an angle. So we have a lot of X and a lot of Y G-force, and then the GSUM is also, near 1. So because it's a real-time calculated channel, it'll just show up in on Podium with your telemetry. You can use it for coaching your drivers in real time. It'll show up in analysis. It just shows up in parallel with all of the other channels. So one of those things like, why didn't we implement this earlier? But here it is. It's going to be available in the next version. Okay, what else? Let's see, we went over UTC channel, IMU smoothing, the GSUM channel. Here's something that will be just kind of useful for testing and updating and troubleshooting your system. So previously you didn't see the firmware tab on Android devices because firmware updating was only available on Windows and OS X because of the USB interface. Now with the firmware, we have enabled this firmware screen. You still can't update firmware over Android, but we have added a couple of buttons. So we can reboot. Now you can, through the app, issue a reboot command. I'm going to do this. Let's see. I've rebooted the system, and it's probably going to start searching for it. This is the case where the demo falls flat. Read. Oh no, it connected like immediately. Never mind. Everything's perfect. So you can actually reboot RaceCapture through the app interface, and this will just prevent you from having to power cycle it. So it's a little convenience thing. A little bit more useful, but a little bit more exciting and dangerous is the ability to do a factory reset. So before, the way you would do a factory reset is through a serial command line interface where you issue a text command, reset config. That was a little cumbersome for most people, or you would have to flash an older version of the firmware and then flash the new version back. Now with I'm not going to do that. I don't care if it demos well, but it'll pop up a message. It says, are you certain? And if you are certain, then it will actually restore your RaceCapture system to factory default. So this could be very useful for troubleshooting. And then if you're running this on Windows, then in the middle here, you'll see the standard firmware update view. So this kind of falls into the category of like, why didn't we do this earlier? Didn't actually take very long to do, but again, here it is. Okay, so another thing now, let's see. I'm looking at my list. I have to demo the USB on the go before I go to the thing that depends on two dashboards. So let's take a look here. Now we have Shift X3, which I don't quite need that right now, but let's see. So as you can tell, this is on a Fire 8 HD tablet. So this was one of the secret things that we talked about, and I couldn't help myself, so I teased it out with that video that you saw earlier. But we've implemented USB on the go, and we have our USB on the go cable with this this charging port, which doesn't do as much as you would hope, but we'll talk about that. So plugging into USB and then going to preferences, change your connection type, and this is only available on Android because iOS hates everybody, all developers at least. But USB on the go, select that, and then I'll show you an interesting feature. This is a side effect that we weren't really expecting, but due to how USB permissions work on Android, the USB ID that every USB device has a unique ID, has an identifying ID. It's called the PID, product ID, and the vendor ID. So the app, when we install the app, we tell Android, hey, there's this product ID and vendor ID that I know about. when this USB device plugs in, I am the app that should run. So we weren't even expecting this to be possible, but when you plug it in RaceCapture, it automatically launches the app, which is pretty nifty. And now we're connected and reading data over USB. So yeah, that's how that works. It's pretty slick. There are some hiccups, especially with app restarting and when you plug the sequence that you plug things in. This is considered experimental right now because while we tested it on a Fire 8 HD, Fire 7, a Samsung, a tablet, a Samsung phone, we need you all to help and test and see where does it work, where does it not work, where do you see glitches, and so on. But this works with all versions of the RaceCapture system except for the Mark I of RaceCapture Pro. We weren't able to get that to work on that system. So the what do we call the elephant in the room regarding OTG is how the hell do we charge things? So we have this charging port. These generic chargers, they're only good for providing power to the device that's connected. And with RaceCapture, since you're already getting 12-volt power through your car, it's not going to put a big load on the tablet itself. Well, in theory, it should be zero load. I haven't actually measured the current because I didn't want to chop up one of these cables to do that. But the power supply in RaceCapture should cause the RaceCapture to not draw power over the OTG connection. The classic problem is that because the OTG spec says that the tablet needs to provide power to the USB devices that it's connected to, it can't charge by definition. It doesn't make sense. So we did quite a bit of research into this. There were some charging hubs that I tried, looked at them off of Amazon. I'm grabbing one here. There's this guy. You might have seen this already. There's even a tantalizing switch called charge or OTG. Well, what happens is when you switch it to charge, your OTG devices get disconnected, and then OTG puts it back. So it could be useful still for like if you want to charge when you're not racing, and then unless you're endurance racing, your sprint race is going to be if your device can last an hour, that could be okay. But anyways, I tried two different versions of these, and it also has a charge port, as you can see. Didn't do the job. Chris Ray was here at the lab, and I smacked my forehead when he said, "Well, why don't you just use a inductive charger in your car?" And a lot of phones nowadays support wireless charging. And here's the one I use at home. Of course, there are car models. There are even high-powered car models that you can use. And these do work while connected over OTG because the power path is completely separate. So I think my request is to the community is to do some research on that, see what you can come up with, find some recommendations for phone mounts with charging, high-powered charging, and would love to see what kind of recommendations, what testing you can come up with on that, because the power, the obvious benefit of a direct wire connection to RaceCapture is compelling enough to warrant the research. There's another thing too. So USB-C provides a better option for charging, and what you're looking at here is this is a USB-C hub, and the way I actually admittedly don't know a ton about USB-C. I need to bone up on that a bit more, but USB-C provides a power path that may allow for bidirectional charging or more flexible charging schemes. Okay, so I got a Samsung Note 8 just for this purpose. I found this, actually it's pretty nice. It's a refurbished unit off of Amazon, $124. So this could be a good alternative to a Fire 8, especially if you don't want to see all the ads from Amazon. But this has a USB-C port. And so I connected RaceCapture over this USB-C hub. Then I connected a power path rated charger, and I was connected with data, and the tablet was charging. However, this part doesn't seem to be power path rated, so the tablet complained about slow charging. So my challenge to you, the community, is to find a hub that has a high-powered charging path for USB-C, and if something could be found, that could be an option as well. So that is the extent of our research with USB OTG. So please help out and let us know what you've been able to find. All right, let's see. Are there inductive charging solutions for the Kindle? I do not believe. No. Chris Ray points out there are USB devices that go in line for measuring current. That's a really good point. Damn, that guy is smart. Anyways, so the reason why I wanted to do OTG before this next demonstration is now we have to get in. We have to bring in a second screen. Oh God, the ads. Okay. So right now I'm connected over. While this is starting up, I can kind of show you how the performance of the USB connection. It's basically equivalent to the Bluetooth connection because we're broadcasting data over for 50 hertz. So everything, whatever connection there is to the RaceCapture app, it's always at 50 hertz, whether it's Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, or now USB on the desktop, or USB over OTG. So it's pretty smooth with the Wi-Fi because of the Wi-Fi protocol overhead. There's a bit of jumpiness sometimes, but with this is pretty smooth. So I was quite happy with how that turned out. Okay. Let's see if I could get everything in frame. I'm going to move the RaceCapture backwards so we can see the screens here. Okay, so with Shift X3, we have the ability to do page switching with a button. Let's see if we could see it, both of that. That's not in screen. Wait, maybe it is. Okay, so here's two screens. We have Shift X3 here, and you can see both screens are switching with each press of the button. Okay, so this might be an undesirable thing if you have multiple screens in the car, which is certainly possible with RaceCapture. So now with the latest version of the app, we can say we can disable remote dashboard navigation, turning that off, and now only the dashboard where it's enabled will flip screen. So you can leave one dashboard on whatever screen that matters for you. You may be looking at oil pressures or other critical sensors off to the side, and then your main dashboard in front of you can be enabled with page flipping. So I think the max number of dashboards we've seen in a race car is 3 right now for RaceCapture. So in theory, let me think. So we can have Bluetooth, USB OTG, 2 Wi-Fi connections. That's 4. So who's going to do 4 dashboards in your race car? So we'd like to see that. Oh my God. So let's see. We're almost done. I think those are getting close to the last feature. There's one more thing, and this is kind of a this is the other surprise. And we don't have a way to demo it, but we will be testing it at Thunder Hill. And why do I mention Thunderhill Raceway? Well, that's because the only thing that works at Thunderhill is Verizon. And we are getting ready to switch the cellular connectivity for RaceCapture and Podium Connect to have a cellular module that works with Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, basically every carrier in the US. You put in a Verizon SIM and then select the Verizon APN, and it works with Verizon. You put in a Freedom Pop or AT&T SIM, it works with that as well. So the the Thunderhill Racetrack is a very, very popular track in Northern California, as many of you know. And the fact that AT&T doesn't work there has kind of been the bane of our existence. It's almost comical. But the backup way of doing telemetry would be via the app on the phone via a hotspot, which is not ideal. So with the new cellular capabilities, you'll be able to put in a Verizon SIM, and it will work just like it would before. And the technology is what they call it's 4G LTE Cat M1, and Cat M1 means it's designed for what they call Internet of Thing devices, IoT devices, and specifically designed for exactly what we're doing, broadcasting telemetry data. So, yep, Shannon, it's all the bands. So, yep, it's now that we have a module that can do all of them, we can just basically support all carriers. We will be releasing this for North America first, and then doing some extended testing for worldwide. So yep, that's it. Oh, I had the logo upside down. How tacky. I'm available for any questions. Let's see. Retrofit into an RCP3 or a separate module. Unfortunately, the cellular module is soldered down onto the boards, so they can't. It's basically permanently installed. So yeah, we have to build new boards for that. But you know, if what you have is working for you now, then you should be able to just continue using it. OTG versus Bluetooth. Bluetooth is pretty solid. You have to have the right device. We have a giant stack of, when we first implemented Bluetooth, a giant stack of Android devices. Some of those Android devices are now too old to run the app, but we just naively, when we were first implementing Bluetooth, we were like, it's just going to work everywhere. It's easy, right? It should just work. But we found out that the Bluetooth implementation varied quite a bit from manufacturer to manufacturer, and it's just not very stable on some hardware. Now, that's why we recommend certain devices like the Fire 7 and the Fire 8. Always been stable and reliable. The Samsung tablets, 90% of them are reliable, and and most of the phones, they've pretty much figured out Bluetooth nowadays, but in the past, yeah, they were pretty unstable. So Bluetooth versus OTG, I would say with a good device, it is almost on par, but there are always, it's just more complex, and there's more, when there are more things going on, there are more possibilities for failure, like at the Android level or whatever, and the USB connection is just going to get the edge on that. And we know that wireless, people want to see hardwired connections as much as possible in a harsh race car environment. So despite the power challenges, we felt that OTG was important enough to implement that. What else we got? Yes. Yeah, the data delivery is much more smooth with OTG. Although you can, I think we're still both connected. Let's see. Let's go to the equivalent page. Okay, yeah, we're looking at RPM here. So the top one is OTG, the bottom one is Bluetooth. Let's take a look at vroom. We don't have any engine noises, sorry. This is off the OBD2 simulator. It's pretty quick. I mean, the latency between Bluetooth and OTG, it's really hard to see. So yeah, the Bluetooth data delivery is it doesn't have a lot of hiccups, if at all. The USB is just going to be just better by definition. Yeah, Cameron. Cameron says, I always have problems with Bluetooth connection in my RaceCapture Pro. You maybe try. Maybe you are using a Fire tablet. I'm not sure, or something else. Yeah, maybe try a different device. Yep. What else? Let's see if there's anything left. So I think that's about it. So when are we going to have this out? We should have, we'll start building packages for this later on today and start making these available for download and installation. I know there are always race events coming up, and hopefully if there are any this weekend, it would be good to update, especially with the track selection feature. Which has been a problem for racers from time to time when you're at racetracks with multiple configurations. So try to get that installed before your next race and provide some feedback in the community here. All right. Well, I guess that's it. I think that worked out fairly well. I think next step is to invest in some better video and audio equipment, and I think we'll make this an ongoing thing. All right. Any time frame in mind for the podium overhaul? That'll be the next live stream. We will be very happy to talk about that. Oh, thanks, Shannon. Shannon says, great job. Thank you. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it. Thank you. All right, signing off. Thanks again.